Oh, hey, welcome to sunny London. Oh, actually, wait, it is sunny today. How cool is that? That is so lucky to be back here at The Point, because it's called The Point in Greenwich. Some people refer to it as Point Hill, but yeah, it's a great view. And today, I'm back with this beast, the 70-200 F2.8 S. The sharpness it offers to shoot the skyline, even at 2.8, because I had a few tests of shooting it with the 2.8 aperture, and it's mind-blowingly sharp. So I'm quite happy to be testing this lens today, and I'm going to be taking you with me around some of my best places in Greenwich, where we're going to take some photos, videos, and shoot some time lapses. This lens is 1/3 of every wedding photographer's kit, because they use a 14-24 2.8, 24-70 2.8, and this 70-200 2.8. So why am I using this lens? Well, there are situations where you really need 2.8, especially shooting any time lapses at night. However, also when you're shooting through things, where I just recently shot a time lapse with this lens where I had a net, anti-pigeon net, when I was shooting from a residential building, and I didn't want the net in the time lapse. So shooting through that net, that was quite far, about 3 meters away from me. I put the lens at 2.8, extended it to 200mm, and then the net magically disappears. That's the kind of a rule of wide open apertures and the magic of shooting through things that just go out of focus and blur out, that you don't see them. So in this time lapse, you just never saw that net. How amazing is that when you're shooting at long telephoto lenses with wide open apertures, you can make things in front of the lens disappear. And I love how that time-lapse turned out. And when I shared this time-lapse on my Instagram page, at London Viewpoints, it had an amazing amount of reach and engagement, unlike my other posts, because videos normally don't get that good engagement, but that one definitely did, because it kind of looked like a model railway almost. That's at least my feeling, and some people shared it too. So yeah, that time lapse came out quite well. So hopefully today we'll get some good time lapses too. So when I got here a couple of minutes ago, there was literally no clouds, and I was thinking I'll probably take a few photos here and won't be shooting any time lapses. Then one cloud appeared over there, and I thought, oh, I might shoot a time lapse. And now that cloud has literally disappeared. So yeah, I won't be shooting the time lapse because there's nothing moving in the scene. So we're gonna move somewhere else where we might find some more things moving to shoot a time lapse. We're back on the 20mm on the Z6 with IBIS on, and yeah, I love this lens for vlogging. I've got my variable ND filter in front and shooting at 1.8 at 1/50. And yeah, I love this setup. You may be wondering, why do I come to Point Hill that often? This is the reason. Free parking. So the only resident permit holders parking here is between 9 and 10. We're in Greenwich, somewhat close to central London, and this is free if you come here after 10 o'clock. Amazing! But if you feel like you want to mention, oh Michael, but isn't the congestion charge zone extending past Greenwich all the way to the A205? Don't even get me started on that in the comments, because I'll ban you. And while I'm here in Blackheath, I thought I'll do a little test on the 70-200 to see how it moves focus as I'm getting closer to the lens. So let's now switch to that. It's definitely not willing to focus on me. I am in sunshine and I'm checking on my phone. It does not want to focus on me. I've done this mark here now, so I will want to see if it's actually trying to pick up a face or not. Right, we're at 70mm and I'm moving backwards, seeing if it actually will recognize a face, or if I'm just gonna speed up really quickly here. Does it recognize my face or just not? Right, we're at 200mm and I don't think it wants to recognize a face at all. And now we've changed from the full frame trying to find the focus into just wide area, which is the wide dash L. And I'm literally in the middle of that square, and it's probably not gonna focus at me because at 200mm, it doesn't seem to want to do that. What happens when I'm actually walking forward, getting closer? Will it actually do something? Somehow it doesn't want to, but when I get closer, it seems to be recognizing it. So I'm gonna be walking really close, right toward the frame, and at some point, it will recognize that my face is a face. But it's, yeah, not ideal. Here's a quick test at 5.6. So 200mm, but 5.6 now. So maybe slightly less shallow depth of field will help it actually focus on my face when I'm walking towards it, because it shouldn't be that difficult. Okay, good to know that 5.6 worked. It was something to do with the shallow depth of field of 2.8. Now I'm at F4 and I'm interested, will it work at F4? Yeah, that was a little bit disappointing. I must agree that at 2.8 it just did not want to face track, either in full frame tracking or just in the middle square tracking. But at F4 it did all right, at 5.6 it did all right. I didn't test the other f-stops because probably the higher you get, the less shallow depth of field there is, so it probably struggles the least. But I was kind of hoping that the Z6II at 2.8 with specifically this lens will just work, but it kind of didn't. Anyway, back to finding some place to time-lapse. Let's go Greenwich Park. Actually, this view behind me isn't too bad. Let's time-lapse that. And the time-lapse is now running. So the lens is currently at f8 because even with an 8-stop ND filter that I've put in front, I was only able to get the exposure right at ISO 100 at f8. It's a 1 second interval and a 0.6 second shutter. On the 70-200, I obviously had to do a longer exposure at f8, like 3 seconds overexpose or whatever. And then in the meantime, while the exposure is taking, unscrew the body or the lens so that the electric connections are lost. And then the lens were able to stay at f8, so there would be no aperture flicker. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, the lens in between every shot will be closing and opening. So like goes from f8 to 2.8, f8, 2.8. You don't want that unnecessarily. It's small, the aperture flicker that native Z lenses produce, but it's visible, so best to avoid that. And as far as I know, it doesn't damage the lenses or the electronics on the body, so I always do that. Let's see how this time-lapse turned out. But one thing you have to do now is remember to click back the lens. lovely view here in Greenwich from right next to the General Wolfe statue. But here we will finish on the daytime time-lapses section, and I'm gonna take a quick break, warm up, have dinner, and then I'm gonna go out in the evening and shoot a couple of time-lapses with the 70-200 2.8 at night. So let's now transition to that. So I'm here with my friend Sławek and shooting from his apartment building. This window actually has a phenomenal view towards the shard, but it's the train lines that are amazing here. So this is exactly what I'm shooting today, specifically for stock, but I tested the 70-200 2.8 and I also got a few time lapses on the 500. So yeah, here they are. Summarizing on my experiences with the 70-200 2.8 S, the latest Nikon lens that's not cheap, but it is surprisingly sharp at 2.8. As I showed you in one of these time lapses that I shot through that net, there was no color fringing. It was super sharp, edge to edge. So for that reason, I know that lens is worth their money. The VR is not quite still usable on any Z series camera, the Z6 or the Z6II in video mode, because when you're panning, it just jumps. It's still with the VR, it jumps. There's no new algorithm how the VR works together with IBIS to make smooth panning, because the lens tries to hold for as long as it can to a certain subject. So if you're handheld shooting video and not panning, it's perfect. It's amazing what it can do just holding in your hands at 200 or 300 shooting 4K in DX mode. It is fantastic, but you start panning or tracking a subject and it will do these jumps. So I didn't like that. And as I shown earlier, I also didn't like the fact that at f2.8 at 200 the autofocus just wasn't tracking. I don't think it's the lens to be blamed for that. Most likely it's the camera, but it is not as shallow being only 2.8 as some other lenses, and I kind of expected that at 2.8 it would still do face tracking. Especially the Z6II potentially is here to blame, because it's the camera that should work the autofocusing and face tracking with a lens, so it's not really the lens's fault. So sharpness is amazing. It's a native lens. All the profiles are corrected in body, and then you get a range of 70-200 at wide open aperture that the 2.8 is. So everything else is amazing about this lens, but for that price, probably for the things that I use, I would rather get some second-hand, maybe second or third generation behind 70-200, still with autofocus because it's cool to have with VR, but just not the latest ones. I'm sometimes happy shooting with lenses that have autofocus, legacy Nikon lenses through the FTZ adapter, because they are amazing. It was a pleasure getting to test this lens, and I have to thank Nikon UK for sending it over for me to try. I loved it. But if you're a photographer that needs a 70-200 2.8 native ideally for a Z system, this is the lens to have, because I can tell you that the results from that lens that the camera can produce are stunning. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe to see future videos from me. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm a London-based time-lapse travel and architecture photographer. You can find me on Instagram at London Viewpoints, and I'll see you guys in the next video.